Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Thank you very much, Ken Rice. Good evening, everyone, and welcome inside the Fan Cave. This is the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. All you have to do is call those numbers, 412-575-2600. That's the hotline that puts you in touch with us. I'm here. Andrew Fillipponi is at 93.7 The Fan. PM team, I'm sure, was buzzing today with all the moves of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And, Andrew, they went the other way, I guess, this offseason versus last when they spent $77 million on so many players and long-term contracts. We see a series of basically one-year deals, a lot of guys coming in, with $2 million or less. I guess that's all they have. They got 2 more draft picks when they traded Riley Smith, and they're looking to acquire them. They got a second-round pick for Hayes the other day, and I thought that was a generous thing by the Blues. So I don't know where they are. I look at this team, and I sometimes wonder, they still want to win. They got their core together, but yet they're trying to also, build up their system. So how do you do both?
Well, they're not all in anymore. They used to be with the Penguins. We talked about so many years for the Sidney Crosby era. So much was committed to trying to win right now. Get to the Stanley Cup. If not, advance multiple rounds into the playoffs because the Penguins budgeted for that. They had so much invested in making sure the upcoming season was a great one. I heard a Kyle Dubas today who has tacitly admitted that what he did last offseason backfired. All that money he spent, and they had nothing to show for it. They finished in the same exact spot in 2024 as they did in 2023. And really it seems, Bob, like what he's saying is we hope we only take one step back to take 2 steps forward. Let's not do anything crazy. Let's not give out big deals. We don't want to be content with just qualifying for the playoffs. I think he's pretty much saying we need to get our money situation right before we become a contender again with this core of players. And that's very different from what he said when he took over the job and what the Penguins have been all about for the last decade plus.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that they missed the playoffs now 2 years in a row, you would think you want to strike now. But again, they put themselves in a tough position with long-term deals, especially one to Ryan Graves. And he was not as good as they thought. This time last year when all this stuff was happening, I think most people were very much in on this, thinking that, they brought in assets that could help them, especially on the power play. With Erik Karlsson especially, they dumped some salary they did not want. All of that looked good on paper, but it just didn't materialize. And here they are now with just putting guys like Matt Grzelcyk, who is a 30-year-old defenseman. He was a healthy scratch, though, down the stretch for the Boston Bruins, a guy that's had experience in this league. Me personally, Blake Lizotte is the best signing I saw today. I like the name Anthony Beauvillier, but Blake Lizotte has a better history there. And these are smaller guys, too, Andrew. They're not exactly what I was looking for from a physical point. I thought they were going to kind of get bigger, and they didn't necessarily do that today.
I'm not sure Lizotte could see over that desk you're standing at right now, Bob. He's very small, and he did play for the Kings in the playoffs and had a goal in Game 5 when they got bounced by the Oilers. But he didn't even get a qualifying offer. He's the equivalent to the Kings of what P.O. Joseph was for the Penguins here. Look, we'll find out how much Joseph gets on the open market. I know Dubas said after today that they have not closed the door on that. But when you bring in Grzelcyk and you also bring back Ryan Shea, I'm not really sure where he fits. And I like the way P.O. Joseph played late in the year with Chris Letang. I thought he had made substantial strides. I thought he finally started to look like the guy they thought he would be when they brought him over in that Phil Kessel trade with Arizona when he was the big prospect that they got back in that deal. So, Bob, it's really, in a way, it's sad because we took for granted for so long that the Penguins would just be a Stanley Cup contender. This is what happens to so many teams. Look at the Red Wings. They were great and in the playoffs every year for more than 2 decades. It's been a long time since they've been relevant. And we're now dealing with that, but you also still have Sidney Crosby in his prime. And it's in a very long prime because he's 36 years old, but he's still playing at such an elite level. I want to see Sidney Crosby on a team that can win a Stanley Cup, not a team that it feels like right now they'll be lucky to even make it into the playoffs.
Well, that's going to be one of the situations looking forward to, whether or not and how much he signs for. And also a guy like Marcus Patterson, who I thought did very well. And they're going to have to step up and pay him more money maybe than they would like to, but they're going to have to do that to keep him if they'd like to keep him. We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll also talk about the Pirates, who return home tomorrow. Very significant 10 games upcoming. We'll break it down. The Mets won again tonight. They've been red hot. We'll get into that and more. Want your calls right here. It's the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call on KDKA Plus and 93.7 The Fan. Our GMC Sierra tweet of the night. And this is an interesting one. Talking about the record-setting spree of money here by NHL teams today. The most ever, $1.1 billion spent. You see Jake Gensel over there. Steven Stamkos had to make room. They wanted Gensel ahead of Stamkos, even though Stamkos scored 40 goals last year with Tampa Bay. His 16-year reign there is over. He heads to Nashville along with Jonathan Marchessault, and it's now it's going to be Kucherov and Gensel. And it's interesting, Andrew, how he did that, because it looked like he was going to sign with Carolina. They had an 8-year, $64 million deal. They could give him one more year than Tampa could, but he elected not to do that, bet on himself to get more on a yearly basis, and he did today.
He did, and it's a shame that he didn't end up with the Penguins. So many of the mishaps that we talked about here, the Graves contract, the Carlson trade, the Jari contract, Raquel even getting a 5-year deal. And there are so many Tampa Bay hockey fans that are livid over this decision to not give Steven Stamkos a deal. He was their captain. He was not a secondary guy. You mentioned the 40 goals, but he was seen as the face of the team that won those Stanley Cups. So Jake Gensel is a younger player and a better player, but I think he's actually walking into a situation where I'm not sure all of his teammates agreed with this move, and certainly the fans look at him now as a polarizing figure.
How about Nashville, though? They've gone all in now. I mean, Stamkos
Barry
is there.
Trotz.
Barry Trotz, and he really liked what he saw from Marchessault, and who wouldn't? And then I think they got Brett Pesce, too, who's a very good defenseman from Carolina.
No, I think he went to New Jersey.
Or New Jersey?
Am I
okay.
right?
I thought he went to Nashville.
I think Pesce went to New Jersey.
Okay, whatever the case. There are a lot of these guys I thought would end up in different places. So the fact that Marchessault and Steven Stamkos went to Nashville was a little surprising to me. I thought, one of the better deals, Boston, we haven't talked about it, Elias Lindholm goes from Vancouver to there. I think Boston is going to be a team that is going to be good again. You know, they're older, but they still have ways of figuring this out. Now, goaltending-wise, we'll see how that goes. But I wonder now about Tristan Jarry, because, it was a report by Josh Yohe in The Athletic that said that along with Riley Smith, that Kyle Dubas was looking to move Jarry if he could, but no takers. I don't know exactly what that means. Maybe there wasn't enough in return. But it makes you wonder what they may do in their goaltending here moving into this season, knowing they have a guy knocking on the door in Joel Blomqvist. He needs to play at this level to get a good evaluation of what he is, but will he get that chance?
Doesn't sound like it. It seems like the number of years left on Jarry's contract was the problem for other teams. And, Bob, didn't we say that exact thing when the deal was signed? I know you're a bigger Tristan Jarry fan than I am, much bigger. But even you said, I think this is too many years.
Yes.
And it sounds like that was the sticking point for teams. They don't mind the salary on Jarry, but they don't want to commit to another 4 years of him, especially given how last year ended losing the job to Alex Nedeljkovic. So I think that's the issue. Kyle Dubas made the argument at the draft that he felt like they got, upper echelon goaltending for most of the season, and then the guys in front of the goalies let them down. I don't know if I agree with that. I saw Nedeljkovic behind that same defense get hot at the end of the year. So he's trying to spin it now and create a situation where these guys can all coexist here next year. As I see it, the only way Blomqvist gets significant playing time in Pittsburgh, Bob, is if one of those two guys ahead of him get injured. And I guess with Tristan Jarry, there's always that chance.
Yeah, I'd like to see him. I just want to see what he can do at this level based on what he's done.
I want to see young.
In the AHL. He
said they want to get younger and hungrier, and they brought in 32-year-old Kevin Hayes, 30-year-old Grzelcyk. Beauvillier's younger, but Beauvillier played for 3 teams last year, Bob.
Yeah.
3.
And he has 5.
It's a nice name to say, but where's the production?
Yeah. I know, I get it. All right, let's switch to the Pirates real quick as we load up some calls here. They come home tomorrow. I think this is a absolutely important 10-game stretch. They have the Cardinals, who right now are the 3rd wild card. They're 3 games ahead of the Pirates there. 3 games in a row with them. And then they have the Mets for 4. The Mets won again tonight. They got 6 in the top of the 10th to beat Washington. They were once 10 under 500. Now they're at 500 ahead of the Pirates. And then they have the Brewers, a team which got better, it seemed, even after a lot of people wondered what they were doing. Counsell leaves, Corbin Burns leaves, and yet here they are. So how important is this, and what will we learn from it? I'm of the belief, and I said this the last time I talked to you, I thought they should have done something by now so that these games would, be more important to them and they'd have bats in place to maybe help them. They're going to wait and see. And what if they go in these 10, 5-5 or 4-6? They're going to be actually regressing maybe. Then what?
Yeah, I think it's going to really determine what they do at the deadline, and maybe that's partly why they've decided not to do anything yet. Are they sure that they're going to buy? Bob Nutting made it sound that way when he spoke 2 weeks ago, but given the way that the Padres have played lately, the way the Cardinals have played lately, and even the Mets with the grimace magic they got going on there, Bob, ever since the big grimace threw out the first pitch at that Mets game, they've been basically unbeatable. No one can cool them off. They're going to look. The Pirates, you're right. If they go 5-5, they might be 4 games out by the All-Star break. And at that point, are you going to sell assets to try to help this year's team? You probably still should, given your pitching. But I don't know. They also have Aroldis Chapman making $10.5 million a year on a 1-year contract, Bob. I think they'd look to trade him in that situation.
Yeah, maybe so. And Bednar still out with an injury, so that situation.
And maybe Big Rowdy. Maybe you can get a return for Rowdy now with the way he's hit.
Well, you better get somebody in there. I just wish they would have done it earlier than this, because now they're going to go into these games, and this is not going to be an easy stretch. And, boy, they need to go on a streak like the Mets went on to erase a 10-game deficit to get to 500. We'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, I couldn't let today go without talking some NBA with you, because we saw a record-setting contract given to Jason Tatum. When you remain with a team, you get the Supermax opportunity. I think it's $314 million over 5 years, but there were a lot of interesting moves. Klay Thompson, I thought, would end up with the Lakers. Instead, he goes to the Mavericks. And that's an interesting, quote, big three with Luka Doncic and also Kyrie Irving, because Luka's going to get that big Supermax deal as well. What do you think about him going there, and were you surprised?
I was, because the way LeBron made that opt-out decision, you thought that it was going to open the door for another big-name player to get in there, and I think that's what he was hoping.
On Twitter, at KD Pomp, at the Pony Express says, guys, Kyle Dubas may not think the Penguins aren't rebuilding, but his actions say they are. And then we have Van Heflin, who says, Penguin fans are becoming as bad as Pirate fans in their negativity. I don't know about negativity. I think it's just a reality that here they are missing playoffs 2 years in a row. The goal is to make the playoffs. They budget for playoffs, and they haven't made it. And they're doing it at a time when I thought they were going to do everything in their power to try to get these guys one more opportunity to win a cup. And they did that last offseason, but it backfired. Now they're kind of stuck in where they are. So I don't know if it's negativity or reality. Whatever the case, it's not as optimistic as it once was.
The FanDuel Sportsbook has them 12th in the Eastern Conference right now. They give the Flyers better odds of winning.
No.
I know, it's not. And
Flyers, really?
And look,
I don't know if I'd agree with that.
Yeah, Flyers better odds. Ottawa Senators better odds.
Well, they're up and coming, and they got some good young talent on that team.
And so you can appreciate everything the Penguins did for 2 decades and their 3 Stanley Cup wins in the Sidney Crosby era, and also just call it like you see it with their current state. It's not good. It's not great. There are too many bloated contracts, and there are guys that are too old. And so this is an admission this offseason that you can't just keep throwing money at a bad problem. You can't just keep trying to throw money at it and hoping that it changes. They're trying to pivot, and we'll see how that goes. Kyle Dubas, when he came in, Bob, he said, I'm going to bet on Sidney Crosby and Mike Sullivan. Well, now it feels like he's hedging his bets a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. One more tweet before we go to break. Gnominic says, trade Brian Reynolds now. His value is high. Get an outfielder and prospects. Here we go. We got a lot of that talking about. We'll come back with more, including Happy Bobby Bonilla Day and some other big-time contracts for not playing for their teams. We'll get into that and more as we continue. KDKA Plus and 93.7 The Fan. It's the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. KDKA News at 11 starts in about 5 minutes from right now. Ken Rice at the anchor desk. And what's going on, Ken?
Bob, tonight we're learning new details about the reopening of the Schumann Juvenile Detention Center, plus new concerns from people in Moon Township over a massive new church and its festival, and why a local county elections board is facing a new lawsuit. All coming up at 11, Bob. See you then.
All right, thanks very much, Ken. Andrew, I think all of us would love to be paid a lot of money not to work. But that's exactly what Bobby Bonilla has done since 2010. He still has 11 years left. It's Happy Bobby Bonilla Day. Another 1,193,000 and change. But he's not the only one. Max Scherzer is getting $15 million. How about Chris Davis, who signed an amazing contract for him, $9 million, one check today.
And how about if you combine Jared Jones and Paul Skeens' salary this year, Bob? It's just barely more than Bobby Bonilla, $1.3 million. And they're working a lot harder than Bobby Bo.
There's no question about that. So it's going to be interesting to see in the coming days here.
Bob, I'm going tomorrow night. You want to sit next to me at the game? You going to go up in the press box?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Okay, I'll see you.
We could have a drew.
No, I had to stop myself. You see what I did there? That was self-censor.
No, I'll be there. I'm anxious to watch this game tomorrow. And I think it's going to be color tomorrow, right? They're moving Jones to the middle game of the series, which is interesting.
Correct.
All right.
Yep.
Pony, thanks. Appreciate it, as always. And we'll have a drew tomorrow and we'll talk about it. It's going to do it. Join us tomorrow night for another edition of the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Good night.